My house no longer belongs to me. It's a strange thought for someone who laid every beam on the roof with his own hands, personally chose every light fixture and shade of paint. Now it's foreign territory, where I am an unwelcome and useless guest. Today I woke up again to the noise in the kitchen. Beatrice never knew how to close the cabinets quietly. My name is Quentin Haraway. I am 77 years old, and this is my story of betrayal by those you love most. For the past 5 years since Elaine's death, I have been living in a fog. My wife was the sun around which our entire family universe revolved. Elaine knew how to smooth things over, find the right words when I argued with my daughter. Without her, everything went downhill. My hands were shaking more than usual this morning. I stared at them for a long time, as if they were traitors. 3 months ago, I spilled coffee right on the drawings of the latest project I was consulting on. I still feel ashamed when I remember the look on the young architect's face, a mixture of pity and irritation. My room used to be the master bedroom of the house. Now it's something like a storage room with a bed. 6 months ago, Beatrice insisted that she and Knox move into it because you need fewer stairs at your age, Dad. I agreed, even though I knew the real reason was the luxurious bathroom with a jacuzzi that I had installed for Elaine in the last year of her life. I struggled to get out of bed, fumbling for my slippers. They weren't where I had left them again. Beatrice or Knox had come in again while I was out and rearranged something. Small changes, as if to test my memory and sanity. Maybe they think I don't notice. But I'm an engineer. I always notice details. 20 years ago, when Beatrice called me with the news that she and Knox were being evicted from their apartment, I didn't hesitate for a second. Dad, it's only for a couple of months until we get back on our feet, she said, clutching a box of knickknacks to her chest. Elaine pursed her lips. She was always more perceptive than me when it came to human relationships. Quentin, they'll never leave, she said later that night. She's our daughter, Elaine. We can't leave them on the street, I replied, completely sure I was right. Not on the street, but in a rented apartment. Like all normal adults, she sighed, but didn't argue further. A couple of months turned into a couple of years, then another 5, 10. And now it's been 20 years. For 20 years, they have been living in my house, eating my food, using my money. Beatrice works at a travel agency. She organizes trips for others, but she herself hardly ever goes anywhere. Knox resells antiques, which in reality means endless hours on the couch in front of the computer and rare trips to flea markets. Their combined income barely covers their own expenses for clothes and entertainment. I slowly descended the stairs, holding the railing with both hands. I used to take these 14 steps 2 at a time. Now every step is a challenge. Dad, have you seen my car keys? Beatrice asked instead of saying hello. She's 45, but in her eyes I still see that capricious little girl who demanded a new doll at the toy store. Good morning, Beatrice, I said, deliberately lowering myself slowly into a chair at the kitchen table. No, I haven't. She rolled her eyes as she continued rummaging through the drawer. Did you even look? They were on the dresser in the hall. I remembered that the keys were in a vase by the front door. I always checked to see if the door was locked before going to bed. An old habit I couldn't shake. But I didn't argue. Lately, I've been doubting my memory more and more. Maybe Knox took them, I suggested, pouring myself some coffee. My hand betrayed me and trembled, and a few drops fell on the table. Beatrice grabbed a towel in irritation. God, Dad, can't you be more careful? I just wiped the table. Her voice, full of irritation, was so different from the way she used to talk to me, before the illness, before my hands started to fail me. I noticed the first signs about a year ago. At first, it was a slight stiffness in my left hand. Then the tremors started, especially when I was nervous or tired. I tried to hide it, wearing my hands in my pockets to conceal my shaking hands. But I couldn't hide anything from Elaine. You need to see a doctor, Quentin, she said one evening. I waved it off. It's just age, honey. Nothing to worry about. But after she died, the symptoms got worse. It was as if without her support, my body began to give up faster. Dr. Parrish studied my test results and lab work for a long time before giving me the diagnosis. Parkinson's disease, early stage. I remember coming home after that appointment. Beatrice and Knox were watching TV in the living room. My living room, in the chairs that Elaine and I had chosen together. What did the doctor say? Beatrice asked without looking up from the screen. Parkinson's. Early stage, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. For a second, the room was silent. Then Knox coughed. That's the one where you shake, right? My aunt died of it. It's a terrible thing. Beatrice gave him a murderous look. What are you talking about? I'm just saying, he began. You don't die from that, idiot, Beatrice cut him off. Then she turned to me with that special look on her face that she got when she wanted something. Dad, this won't interfere with your work, will it? You can still consult, right? At that moment, I understood what she was thinking. Not about my health, not about how I would cope with my progressive illness, but about money, about whether I would continue to pay the bills for the house, for their comfortable existence. As long as I can, I replied briefly and went to my room. A lot has changed since then. My room gradually became smaller. Beatrice and Knox's belongings slowly filled the closets that had previously been crammed with my sweaters and shirts. My photos with Elaine disappeared from the walls of the hallway, giving way to tasteless reproductions that Knox considered promising investments. Even my study did not escape the invasion. One day I discovered that my old drawing table had been moved to the window, and Beatrice's new sewing machine was in its place. You can't draw with your hands anyway, she said when I expressed my dissatisfaction. Besides, it's only temporary. Nothing is as permanent as the temporary. The last straw came when I discovered that Knox had taken my tools without asking to work in the neighbor's garden, tools that I had collected throughout my life and carefully maintained. I found them abandoned in the rain on the neighboring plot. You should have asked, I told him then. God, Quentin, it's just a shovel and a rake. I didn't take your kidney, he replied with that smile I always hated. Besides, you're not using them right now anyway. I didn't answer. What was the point? In their eyes, I had already become a useless old man, whose things could be taken, whose boundaries could be violated, whose opinion could be ignored. This morning, looking at my trembling hands, I remembered how those same hands held little Beatrice when she took her first steps. How they built her houses out of blankets and pillows. How they wiped away her tears after her first broken heart. Now those hands can barely hold a cup of coffee. And my daughter looks at them with disgust and impatience, as if they were a faulty mechanism that interferes with her normal life. I found them, Beatrice exclaimed triumphantly, pulling the keys out of her coat pocket. They were here all along. She didn't even apologize for accusing me. She just grabbed her bag and headed for the door. I'll be late. We have a company party. Dinner's in the fridge. Just heat it up. The door slammed shut, and I was left alone in the silence of the house that had once been my fortress. Now it was just walls and a roof under which I had become an uninvited guest. I finished my coffee and went to the window. My garden, once well-tended and blooming, was now overgrown with weeds. Beatrice said the gardener was too expensive, and I could no longer take care of it myself. In the reflection of the glass, I saw my face, wrinkled and gaunt. The eyes that had seen so much now looked back with quiet sadness. I realized that I no longer recognized the person my daughter had become, and perhaps it was time to stop recognizing myself, the person I used to be. Perhaps it was time for a change. I understand your point. You are absolutely right. The decision about the quality of the drawings and Quentin's suitability for the job should be made by the customer, not the doctor. Let's rewrite the second chapter with this correction. Quentin, we need to talk. Tyler Frost, the young head of the construction department, looked awkward as he shuffled the papers on the table. The latest drawings, there are too many inaccuracies in them. We can't use them in the project. I silently looked at my drawings spread out in front of us. The lines were indeed uneven, noticeably shaky in places where precision was required. Over the last 3 weeks, my hands had been failing me more and more. I understand, I said, trying to maintain my dignity. I can redo them. Tyler shook his head. It's not just this drawing, Quentin. Over the last 2 months, the quality has been changing. I value your experience and knowledge, but right now we need precision. Clients are becoming more and more demanding. I was sitting in the office of the company where I had worked as a consultant for the last 8 years since retiring. The construction firm Northwest Construction valued my 40 years of engineering experience, or rather it used to value it. Listen, Tyler, I know my hands aren't what they used to be, but my brain works perfectly fine. I could dictate the decisions, and one of the junior engineers could do the drawings. We thought about that, Tyler looked genuinely upset. But the project budget doesn't allow us to keep two specialists in one position. You understand what I mean? Of course I understood. Business is business, and I had become a burden. You don't need a Harvard degree to put two and two together. Young Tyler had graduated from university only 3 years ago, but he was already managing a department and, it seemed, deciding my fate. I appreciate your honesty, I said, slowly gathering my things. My hands trembled treacherously, confirming every word Tyler said. Quentin, you were the best, he said, shaking my hand. If the situation changes, just give me a call. We both knew the situation wouldn't change. Parkinson's disease doesn't go away. In the car on the way home, I thought about how to break the news to Beatrice and Knox. The income from my consulting work was not my main source of income, but it was a significant supplement to my pension. It was this money that paid the monthly mortgage, utility bills, and part of the grocery expenses. Beatrice was never interested in the exact amounts. She was just used to me paying for most of the expenses. Earlier this week, I visited Dr. Parrish. The results were disappointing. The disease is progressing faster than we expected, Mr. Haraway. You will need a dosage adjustment and possibly new medications. The house greeted me with the smell of roasting meat and the sound of the TV. Knox was lying on the sofa, buried in his tablet. Oh, hi, old man. How's work? He asked without looking up from the screen. Where's Beatrice? I ignored his question. In the kitchen, hopefully making something edible. My daughter stood at the stove, stirring the sauce in a pot. She seemed irritated. The wrinkle between her eyebrows always gave away her mood. Dad, you're right on time. Dinner's almost ready. How was your day? I sat down at the table, feeling suddenly tired. Not great. Tyler Frost said my drawings no longer meet standards. The company is terminating our partnership. Beatrice froze, her spoon suspended in midair. What? Why? My tremors are getting worse. I can't make accurate drawings and my handwriting. But it's temporary, right? You can take a break and then come back? Her voice took on a panicked tone. Parkinson's disease is incurable, Beatrice. It progresses. She slammed her spoon down on the tabletop. So what now? Are you just giving up? After one conversation? After dozens of flawed drawings and hundreds of comments, I felt irritated. I've been living with this diagnosis for 6 months. You just didn't want to notice how serious it was. Knox, she shouted. Come here. We have a problem. Her husband lazily floated into the kitchen. What's going on? Dad lost his job. Completely. He was fired because of his tremor. Knox whistled. That sucks. What about money now? I looked at them both, trying to figure out when exactly my loved ones had turned into these strangers. Beatrice, my little girl with pigtails who cried when I left on business trips. Now I saw only irritation and fear in her eyes. Not for me, for her own comfort. I have a pension, I said, but it won't be enough for everything. We'll have to review our expenses. What expenses, Dad? We're barely making ends meet. You know Knox's antique business is in crisis right now, and my agency has cut bonuses. Your agency cut bonuses 4 years ago, I pointed out, and nothing has changed since then. Knox sat down across from me, folding his arms across his chest. Listen, Quentin, we all understand that the situation is not pleasant, but we need to be practical. Maybe we can sell something? You have that old collector's watch, right? I struggled to keep from swearing. The watch Knox was referring to was a gift from Elaine on our 25th anniversary. She had saved up for it for 6 months. The watch is not for sale. Come on, Dad, it's just a thing, Beatrice exclaimed. Mom would understand. Don't you dare say what your mother would or wouldn't understand? A heavy silence fell. Beatrice was the first to break it. Okay, let's calm down and have dinner. Then we'll discuss our options. Dinner was spent in tense silence. I had trouble holding my fork. My hands were shaking more than usual, probably due to stress. Noticing Knox's mocking gaze, I lowered my hands under the table. So, Beatrice began when we had finished eating, I've been thinking, if we combine all our income, your pension, my salary, and what Knox gets from sales, maybe we can manage. Combine, I asked. You mean you're proposing a joint budget? Yes, but I'll manage it, she said as if she were doing me a favor. You understand that with your situation, it's better if I handle the finances. I imagine my pension melting away in Beatrice's hands, turning into new shoes and trinkets for her collection of porcelain figurines. No. What do you mean, no? It means no, Beatrice. I will manage my own pension. And how are you going to do that? She pointed to my trembling hands. You can't even sign a check. Beatrice, Knox interjected with unexpected gentleness in his voice. Let's not do this today, okay? Quentin just got some difficult news. Give him some time. I looked at my son-in-law in surprise. In 20 years, this was probably the first time he had ever taken my side. Beatrice also looked stunned. Of course, she said after a pause. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm just worried about our future. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I went to bed early that night, but I couldn't sleep for a long time, replaying the conversation in my head. Something about Knox's behavior alarmed me. He had never been an advocate for my interests. The following weeks were tense. I officially notified the construction company that I was terminating the consultation. The manager, a young man named Tyler, expressed his regret. Sincerely, it seemed to me. You were the best, Mr. Haraway, he said, shaking my hand. If you change your mind, just give us a call. At home, the atmosphere was becoming increasingly oppressive. Beatrice and Knox no longer hid their irritation. Once I heard my daughter complaining to a friend on the phone, "Can you believe it? Now he can't even wash the dishes. Everything falls out of his hands. It's like I'm living with 3 children, not one." Knox began to disappear from the house for days at a time, explaining it away as urgent business. He usually came back tipsy, smelling of cheap whiskey and cigarettes. Beatrice pretended not to notice. On Wednesday, about a month after my last visit to Dr. Parrish, I was sitting in my room trying to read. My tremors made it difficult to even hold the book. I was about to put it down and try to take a nap when I heard voices in the kitchen. Beatrice and Knox didn't know I was home. I had come back early from physical therapy because I was feeling particularly tired. "We can't go on like this," Beatrice said. "Have you seen the bill for his medication? It's insane." "He has insurance," Knox objected, "which only covers part of it. The rest is out of our pocket. And now there's the physical therapy and special bathroom equipment. Do you know how much it costs to convert a bathroom for a disabled person?" The word disabled hit me like a slap in the face. I had never thought of myself in those terms. "I have an idea." Knox's voice became quieter, and I had to strain to hear him. "Remember Milton Grove, the nursing home where my cousin worked? The creepy one with the green walls? It's not creepy, just old-fashioned, but it's cheap, and they take patients with Parkinson's." There was a pause. I froze, afraid to move. "Are you suggesting we send my father to a nursing home?" Beatrice's voice sounded uncertain. Be realistic. We can't cope, neither financially nor emotionally. They'll take care of him there. Besides, if we sell this house—" "Sell the house?" Beatrice exclaimed. "But it's our home." "Technically, it's your father's house. But if he moves to Milton Grove, we can sell the house and use the money to pay for his stay there. And the rest? Well, we could buy something smaller for ourselves. Without the burden of a sick old man." I felt nausea rising in my throat. They were going to write me off, get rid of me like unwanted furniture. "I don't know, Knox. It seems cruel." "Cruel? You know what's cruel? That we're wasting the best years of our lives caring for a person who doesn't even express gratitude. Did you see how he looked at me when I suggested selling that stupid watch? As if I had suggested killing a kitten. It's a gift from Mom. Who cares? It's just a thing. She won't feel anything, and we need the money here and now." I heard Beatrice sigh. "Maybe you're right. I'll look into this place, but we'll decide together, okay?" "Of course, dear. Whatever you say." I quietly returned to my room, feeling everything inside me tighten with pain and anger. They planned to get rid of me and sell the house I had built with my own hands for Elaine. The house where Beatrice grew up, where we celebrated every Christmas and Thanksgiving. I lay awake all night thinking. By morning, I had a plan. I waited until Beatrice and Knox left, then called my old friend Eli Donahue. We had met in college and had stayed in touch ever since, though we rarely saw each other. Eli had become a successful lawyer, specializing in family law and real estate. "Quentin, you old rascal," he exclaimed when he heard my voice. Haven't heard from you in 100 years. Sorry, Eli. Life has been complicated lately. I heard about your diagnosis. I'm sorry, my friend. Thanks. Listen, I need your professional advice. Can we meet? Just not at my house. Eli must have sensed the tension in my voice because he didn't ask any questions. Sure. How about the Blue Cup on Oak Street? 2 o'clock? Perfect. Thanks, Eli. I struggled to get to the cafe. I was feeling particularly bad that day. Eli was already waiting at a table in the corner. Despite his gray hair and wrinkles, he had the same sparkle in his eyes as he did when he was 20. You look terrible, he said instead of a greeting. And you're as tactful as ever. I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't obey me. Eli gestured to the waitress and ordered us coffee. So, what's the matter, Quentin? Judging by your voice, it's something serious. I told him everything. About the progression of the disease, about losing my job, about the conversation I overheard. With each word, Eli's face grew darker. Bastards, he spat when I finished. I'm sorry, Quentin, but your daughter and her husband are real bastards. I felt a pang of pain. No matter how angry I was with Beatrice, she was still my daughter. Maybe, but right now I need to protect myself. What can I do? Eli thought for a moment. The house is entirely yours, right? No co-owners. Yes, I'm the sole owner. Elaine insisted that I not include Beatrice in the documents, even when she came of age. It's your house, Quentin, she said. You built it with your own hands. She was a smart woman, Eli nodded. Okay, that makes things easier. I have a few ideas, but I need to check some legal details. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Say, at 11? Sure. And Quentin, Eli leaned closer. Don't tell them you know about their plans. Let them think they have everything under control. I nodded. The game had begun, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a chance to win. The smell of roast beef with rosemary filled the house. It was my favorite dish, which Beatrice had learned to cook from Elaine. The last time I had eaten, it was on my birthday almost a year ago. Something told me that if my daughter had dug out her mother's old recipe, it meant a serious conversation was coming. I was sitting in the living room when Knox approached with a glass of whiskey. He handed me one. Here you go, old man. A good night for a good whiskey. His unexpected generosity made me even more wary, but I accepted the drink, carefully cupping the glass with both hands so as not to spill it. The last 2 weeks since my meeting with Eli had been strange. Knox had become suspiciously friendly and Beatrice unusually caring. They didn't know that I was aware of their plans. Thanks, I said, taking a small sip. The whiskey was good, expensive, not the brand Knox usually bought. Special occasion? Just wanted to make my father-in-law happy. He smiled with a smile that never reached his eyes. How are your hands today? As usual, I didn't go into details. Why explain that today was a bad day, that the tremors had gotten worse, and that taking my pills in the morning hadn't helped much? Dinner's ready, Beatrice called from the kitchen. Knox helped me up from my chair, an unnecessary gesture that only emphasized his false concern. At the table, Beatrice bustled about, setting out the dishes. She was wearing a dress she usually saved for special occasions and had even put on makeup. You look beautiful, I remarked, carefully sitting down at the table. Thank you, Dad, she smiled, but the smile seemed forced. I thought we needed a nice family dinner. There's been too much stress lately. I nodded, pretending not to notice the anxious glances Beatrice and Knox were exchanging. I knew they were up to something, and thanks to Elijah's advice, I was ready for anything. Rosemary roast beef, Beatrice said, placing a plate in front of me. Your favorite. Mom always said this dish lifts your spirits in the most difficult times. Yes, Elaine used to say that. I looked at the piece of meat in front of me. Thank you. The first few minutes of dinner passed in awkward silence. I struggled with the knife and fork, trying to cut the meat, but my hands wouldn't obey me. Knox, unusually attentive, offered to help, but I refused. My dignity was more important than convenience. Dad, Beatrice finally began, taking a sip of wine, Knox and I wanted to talk to you about something important. I'm listening. I put down my cutlery, pretending to be full, even though I had barely touched my food. We can see how hard it is for you. Her voice sounded soft, too soft. This disease, it's progressing faster than we thought. I nodded, not interrupting her. And we thought maybe you need professional help. It's not that we don't want to take care of you, but it's hard for you, I finished for her. Yes. Beatrice looked relieved that I had said it myself. I work full-time. Knox is busy with his business. We can't provide the care you need. And what do you suggest? I knew the answer, but I wanted to hear her say it. There's a place called Milton Grove, Knox interjected. It's a very good nursing home. They have excellent medical staff who specialize in neurological diseases. A nursing home, I repeated, looking at my daughter. You want to send me to a nursing home? That's not true, Dad, Beatrice hastened to explain. It's a care center. You'll be better off there. And we'll visit you, of course. And how am I going to pay for this care center? I asked, even though I knew perfectly well what their plan was. Beatrice and Knox exchanged glances. We thought we could sell the house, Knox said cautiously. It's too big for you now. The money from the sale could be used to pay for your stay at Milton Grove. It's a sensible decision. Sensible, I echoed. And where will you live when you sell my house? We'll find something smaller, Beatrice replied quickly. Something more manageable. I was silent, looking at them both. They had lived in my house for 20 years using my money, and now that I had become a burden, they were ready to get rid of me like broken furniture. I can no longer afford many of my expenses, I said, steering the conversation in the direction I wanted. Without my consulting work, my pension barely covers the cost of my medications and personal needs. We know, Dad. Beatrice put her hand on mine, a false gesture of sympathy. That's why we're offering this solution. It will be better for everyone. For everyone? I slowly pushed her hand away. Or for you? Don't start, Quentin. Knox frowned. We're trying to help. Help yourselves to my house. Beatrice sighed. Dad, you're being unfair. We've taken care of you all these months, but now the situation is becoming unbearable. Unbearable? I nodded. Interesting word. You know what's unbearable? Hearing your daughter and her husband plan to get rid of you and sell the house you built with your own hands? Beatrice froze. What are you talking about? I heard your conversation, I said calmly. The day you thought I wasn't home, about how you would send me to this Milton Grove, sell the house and buy something for yourselves. No more burdens of a sick old man. Is that what you said, Knox? Knox's face turned pale. Beatrice looked stunned. You eavesdropping? She finally replied, but there was no remorse in her voice, only indignation at being caught. I was home, and I heard the truth. Quentin, listen. Knox tried to take control of the situation. You misunderstood. We really do care about your well-being. You'll be better off at Milton Grove. Spare me, I raised a trembling hand. I know what you want, and I know why my favorite dish is on the table today, and why you, Knox, are treating me to expensive whiskey when you usually drink the cheapest kind. Dad, you're being unreasonable. Beatrice began to lose her patience. Look at yourself. You can't even cut your meat without help. How are you going to live alone? No one said anything about living alone. Then what? Are you going to hire a nurse? With what money? She raised her voice. Your pension doesn't even cover half the cost of maintaining the house. I know. I remained calm, which seemed to anger Beatrice even more. That's why I'll have to stop paying the bills for the house. What? She jumped up. And how do you imagine that will work? Are we going to live without electricity and water? Not us, Beatrice. You. I'm no longer going to pay the bills for the house you and Knox live in. Beatrice stared at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. What are you talking about? This is our shared home. No, I shook my head. It's my house. It was mine until I rewrote it. Rewrote it? Knox leaned forward. What do you mean, rewrote it? Quentin, stop talking in riddles. Beatrice slammed her fist on the table, spilling wine. What have you done? I took a deep breath. The moment I had been preparing for over the past 2 weeks had arrived. After I overheard your conversation, I turned to my old friend, Eli Donahue. He's a lawyer who specializes in real estate. And? Beatrice stared at me intently. And I transferred ownership of the house, I said calmly. Now it belongs to a charitable foundation that supports Parkinson's disease research. There was a deafening silence. Knox sat with his mouth open. Beatrice seemed to have stopped breathing. You. What did you do? She finally whispered. The house is no longer mine. Nor is it yours. I sipped my whiskey. enjoying the rare moment when my hands were relatively still. Now it's the property of the Spokane Valley Parkinson's Foundation. You couldn't! Beatrice jumped to her feet. This is some kind of joke. You couldn't just give away our house. I didn't give it away, Beatrice. I sold it. For a symbolic amount, but I sold it. And it's completely legal. Dad, are you out of your mind? She was now shouting at the top of her lungs. This is our home. Where are we going to live? You can stay here, I replied. The foundation is willing to enter into a lease agreement with you at market value. Or you can find another place to live. You have 30 days to decide. 30 days, Knox finally found his voice. You're kicking us out in 30 days? I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm moving out myself. The terms of the lease are set by the foundation, not me. Beatrice was shaking with rage. Her face was red, her eyes glistening with tears. Not of sadness, but of anger. How could you do this to us? We're your family. Family? I asked quietly. A family doesn't plan to get rid of one of its members when they become a burden. A family doesn't discuss how to sell the house of someone who still lives there. You stopped being my family the moment you decided I could be written off. You, Beatrice choked with rage. You useless egoist, we took care of you. We lived here for 20 years, helping you after Mom died. And this is how you repay us? I looked at her silently. There was not a trace of remorse in her eyes, only indignation that her plans had been ruined. You lived off me for 20 years, I said calmly. In my house, with my money. And not once in all those years did you offer to contribute your share to the bills. Even when your husband was out of work for months. How dare you? She lunged at me and before I could react, slapped me across the face. The sound of the slap echoed around the room. My cheek burned. I slowly raised my hand to my face, feeling everything inside me tighten with pain. Not physical pain, but emotional pain. My girl, my Beatrice, had hit me. You're useless, she spat, looking down at me. A weak, worthless old man. You can't do anything right. You can't even die with dignity. Knox seemed shocked by her outburst. Beatrice, calm down. Don't lecture me. She turned to her husband. You're no better. You sit there with your mouth open while he ruins our lives. I slowly rose from the table. Despite the tremor that intensified with my agitation, I tried to stand up straight. I looked at my daughter, the woman I had raised, whom I loved more than life itself, and saw a stranger before me. There are many things I really can't do anymore, Beatrice, I said quietly. I can't button my shirt by myself. I can't hold a fork steady. I can't write clearly. But I can still make decisions. And I've made mine. No, she shook her head. This can't be. You couldn't just give away the house. It's illegal. It's completely legal. I headed for the dining room door. All the paperwork is done and certified. You can check with the registry office if you don't believe me. The house belongs to the Spokane Valley Parkinson's Foundation. I'm moving into an assisted living facility in a week. The foundation will partially sponsor my stay there. I stopped at the door and turned around. Beatrice stood clutching the back of a chair, her face contorted with anger and shock. Knox sat staring into his glass, as if he could find answers there. You have 30 days, I repeated. A representative from the foundation will contact you tomorrow to discuss the details. No! Beatrice shouted after me. This can't be! But I had already closed the door behind me, cutting off her cries. I walked slowly to my room, feeling a strange emptiness. I hadn't expected victory to feel so bitter, but there was no other way. Sometimes you have to lose something important to preserve what matters most, your own dignity. I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. Dawn was barely breaking outside the window, but the house was already in turmoil. Carefully getting out of bed, I listened. The muffled voices of Beatrice and Knox came from the kitchen. Calm down, for God's sake, Knox hissed. You're only making it worse. Worse? Beatrice's voice rose to a shriek. How much worse could it get? That senile old fool has taken our home away from us. Our home? Technically, it was his house, Knox remarked, for which, judging by the sound, he was hit with something on the table. Don't you dare take his side. 20 years, Knox. 20 years I put up with his boring stories, his rules, his endless tales of the good old days. And for what? To end up on the street in 30 days? I sighed quietly as I headed for the bathroom. My morning routine now had to start an hour earlier. Every movement took 3 times as long as before. Washing, shaving, getting dressed. Simple actions had become difficult challenges. By the time I was finished, the sun was already up and the voices from the kitchen had quieted. When I went downstairs, Beatrice was sitting at the table with her head in her hands. A cup of cold coffee stood in front of her. Shards of what had once been a vase, a wedding gift from my sister, lay scattered on the floor. "Good morning," I said, heading for the coffee maker. Beatrice looked up. Her eyes were red from crying, or maybe from anger. "Nothing good?" I didn't answer, focusing on making coffee. My hands were shaking more than usual. The tension from the previous evening was taking its toll. "Did you really do it?" she asked after a long pause. "Did you give the house to some foundation?" Yes, I saw no point in evasive answers. The documents were signed and registered a week ago. "Why, Dad?" Her voice sounded almost normal, except for a note of despair. "Why are you doing this to us?" I turned around, trying to hold on to my coffee cup. "Why are you doing this to me? You plan to send me to a nursing home and sell my house while I'm still alive. We wanted what was best for you, for yourselves." Beatrice jumped up, her face red with anger again. "We cared for you all this time, and now that you've become like this, you're throwing us out on the street? Like this?" I sat down carefully at the table, trying not to spill my coffee. "Sick, you mean? A burden? A sick old man," to quote Knox. She turned away, unable to find an answer. At that moment, Knox entered the kitchen, buttoning his shirt. "Oh, has the morning squabbling already begun?" His tone was deliberately light, but his eyes remained cold. "Knox, tell him." Beatrice turned to her husband. "Tell him we'll take him to court, that he can't just throw us out, that there are laws." "There are," I confirmed, taking a sip of coffee. "And according to those laws, I had every right to dispose of my property. The house belonged to me. I sold it. Legally." "You're out of your mind," Beatrice flared up again. This is betrayal." At that moment, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. Eli had promised to come by this morning to help with legal matters. Beatrice rushed to open the door, probably hoping for some kind of miraculous salvation. Eli's voice rang out from the hallway. "Good morning. I'm here to see Quentin Haraway." "Who are you?" Beatrice's voice sounded aggressive. "Eli Donahue, Mr. Haraway's lawyer." I could almost see him extending his hand in greeting, and Beatrice ignoring the gesture. "Lawyer?" she asked. "Excellent. Just what we need. Come in." A minute later, Eli appeared in the kitchen accompanied by Beatrice. He looked elegant as always, a sharp suit, a neatly tied tie, polished shoes. Despite his age, Eli always knew how to make an impression. "Quentin, my friend," he smiled, shaking my hand. "How are you feeling today?" "I've felt better," I replied honestly. "So," Beatrice interrupted us, "you're a lawyer? Excellent. Explain to my father that he can't just throw us out on the street. This is our home. We've lived here for 20 years. Eli looked at her calmly. "Miss Haraway, I presume, or Mrs. Drummond?" "Mrs. Drummond," she replied curtly. "Mrs. Drummond, I understand your outrage perfectly well, but I must disappoint you. Your father acted entirely within the law. The house was his sole property, and he had every right to dispose of it as he saw fit." "But he's sick," Beatrice exclaimed. "He has Parkinson's. He's not capable of making decisions like this." Eli smiled politely, but his eyes remained serious. "Parkinson's disease does not affect cognitive function in its early stages. Your father underwent an independent medical examination before the transaction was finalized. The conclusion states that he is fully capable and able to make legally significant decisions." "This is some kind of scam." Beatrice turned to Knox, who was silently watching the proceedings. "Say something. They can't just take our house away." "Technically, it wasn't your house," Eli remarked gently. "You didn't pay rent. You didn't contribute to the mortgage. You didn't pay property taxes. All these years, you lived here as guests." "Guests?" Beatrice gasped in indignation. "We're a family, a family." Eli looked at me and I nodded, allowing him to continue. "Nevertheless, the Spokane Valley Parkinson's Foundation, the new owner of the house, is willing to offer you a lease. The market rate for a house of this size and in this neighborhood is approximately $2,500 per month, plus utilities. If you are interested in this option, I can prepare the paperwork." Knox finally spoke up. 2,500? That's robbery. That's the market, Eli replied calmly. You can do your own research if you think the estimate is too high. Beatrice slumped into a chair. We can't pay that kind of money. You know we can't, Dad. I looked at her silently. Of course I knew. Their combined income barely covered their personal expenses. Restaurants, clothes, new gadgets for Knox. They never saved money, always living for the moment, relying on me to pay for the roof over their heads. You have 30 days to decide, Eli said. Either sign the lease and stay or find another place to live. 30 days, Beatrice echoed. Then her eyes narrowed. Where are you going to live, Dad? Are you moving out in 30 days too? I'm moving next Wednesday, I replied, to Sunny Terraces. It's a senior living community with partial services. Sunny Terraces? Knox whistled. That's an expensive place. Where did you get the money? I sold some things, I said, without going into detail about the collection of antique watches I had been collecting all my life. The rare books, the shares in technology companies I had bought back in the 80s. And the fund subsidizes part of the expenses. So that's what this whole foundation scheme is for, Beatrice exclaimed. To ensure a comfortable old age for himself and throw us out on the street. Beatrice, Elijah's voice sounded unexpectedly harsh. Your father has the right to a dignified old age, especially considering that for the last 20 years, he has supported you and your husband without receiving anything in return. That's not true, she retorted. We took care of him, especially after Mom died. How? Asked Eli. Did you pay for his medicine? For food? For utilities? Beatrice fell silent, her face reddening. I raised my hand, stopping the exchange. Enough, Eli. The situation is clear. Beatrice, Knox, you have 30 days. Make up your minds. After Eli left, the atmosphere in the house became unbearable. Beatrice locked herself in her bedroom, refusing to talk to me. Knox disappeared for the whole day, returning late in the evening, drunk and aggressive. I could hear them arguing behind the closed door. The next few days passed in a similar fashion. I began to quietly pack my things, deciding what to take with me to the new apartment. There was less space there, but I didn't need much. A few books, photos of Elaine, clothes, personal documents. On Saturday, as I was sorting through my things in my room, Beatrice appeared. She looked different, not angry, but somehow dejected, even aged. May I? She asked, standing in the doorway. I nodded, pointing to the chair next to the bed. You're really leaving, she said. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. She looked at the half-empty drawers of the dresser, at the boxes of books. Yes, I folded another shirt into my suitcase. On Wednesday, a car from Sunny Terraces will come to pick me and my things up. Beatrice was silent, watching my awkward movements. Then unexpectedly, she came over and helped me fold a shirt that I couldn't roll up because of my tremors. Thank you, I said, surprised by this sudden display of help. Dad, she sat down on the edge of the bed, looking at her hands. Knox and I talked. We can't afford this rent. I know. We have to move out. I nodded, feeling neither joy nor sadness at the news, just acceptance. But I don't understand why you're doing this, she continued, looking up at me. Her eyes were a mixture of pain and confusion. Why can't you just stay with us? We would take care of you, honestly. How? I asked. How would you take care of me, Beatrice? For the last 6 months, since I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, all you've done is complain about what a burden I've become. How hard it is for you with me. How inconvenient it is that I drop things and move slowly. That's not true, she straightened up, starting to get angry again. Yes, it was difficult, but we managed. You managed by planning to send me to a nursing home and sell my house. I shook my head. That's not what I call caring. Milton Grove is a good place. It's a terrible place, I said calmly. I've been there. I checked it out when I overheard your conversation. An old building with a leaky roof. Staff who can barely handle the minimum duties. Patients sit in the hallways for hours without attention. Beatrice looked embarrassed. I didn't know. Knox said. Knox didn't check. He didn't care. The main thing was to get rid of me and get the house. She didn't argue, which in itself was an admission. Dad, she said after a long pause, her voice changing, becoming softer, almost ingratiating. I know we weren't perfect, But you can't just write off 20 years like that. I'm your daughter, your flesh and blood. I know who you are, Beatrice. Then why? Why are you doing this? We can change. We can be better. We can help you more. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in a long time. I didn't see the little girl I used to rock in my arms, but a grown woman who was willing to send me to a terrible place for her own benefit. Because I don't believe you, I said simply. You're saying this now because you're in a difficult situation? But as soon as I agreed, everything would go back to the way it was. You would start complaining again about how hard it is for you with me. Knox would start disappearing for days on end again. And in the end, you would find a way to get rid of me. That's not fair. Her eyes filled with tears. You're judging us for something we didn't do. I'm judging you for what you plan to do. I went back to sorting things. And for what you've been doing for the last 20 years. Taking advantage of my kindness without giving anything in return. We're your family, she almost shouted. Isn't that enough? No, I shook my head. It's not enough to be family by blood. You have to be family by your actions. Beatrice jumped up and raged again. You'll regret this. When you're alone in your sunny terraces, when there's no one to bring you a glass of water or help you out of bed, you'll regret it. But it will be too late. I won't forgive you. Do you hear me? I will never forgive you. She ran out of the room, slamming the door so hard that the wall shook. I sat motionless, feeling a strange emptiness spreading inside me. Not sadness, not anger, just emptiness and fatigue. In the days that followed, Beatrice and Knox avoided me. I heard them discussing rental options, arguing about money and the things they needed to pack. Sometimes I heard snatches of conversation about what an ungrateful old man I was and how they had wasted their best years. I continued to methodically prepare for the move. Eli helped with organizational matters, coming by every day to make sure I was coping. Are you sure you're making the right choice? He asked the day before my departure, as we sat in my nearly empty room. She's your daughter, after all, the only person close to you left. I was silent for a long time, looking at the photo of Elaine that I was going to take with me. My daughter, my real daughter, died many years ago, Eli. This woman who lives in my house bears her name and has her face, but she is not my Beatrice, not the girl Elaine and I raised. People change, Eli said thoughtfully, not always for the better. Yes, I nodded, carefully wrapping the photo in a soft cloth. And sometimes you have to accept that change and move on. On my last evening in the house, I sat on the porch watching the sunset. The house I had built for my family, which I had filled with love and care, was no longer mine. Tomorrow I would leave here, never to return. Strangely, the thought did not cause me any pain, only calm determination and the feeling that I was doing what I had to do. The new apartment felt strangely unfamiliar, even though I had been living there for almost a week. A small living room with an adjoining kitchen, a bedroom, a bathroom with handrails and special fixtures for people with disabilities. Everything was comfortable, functional, modern, and completely faceless. The Sunny Terraces residential complex was located in the quiet Spokane Valley neighborhood, just a 15-minute drive from my former home. It was a 3-story building with a spacious courtyard, a communal dining room, and a medical office on the first floor. My apartment was on the second floor, overlooking a small pond with ducks. I stood at the window watching an elderly couple feeding the birds. The woman was saying something, gesturing animatedly, while the man listened with a smile, nodding from time to time. They looked happy, despite their age and probably the considerable baggage of their years. Would I ever smile like that again? The last month seemed to have sucked all the strength out of me, leaving only fatigue and a strange emptiness. I did not regret my decision. It was the only right one. But the price turned out to be high. The phone on the bedside table vibrated, for the 3rd time that day. I knew who was calling without looking at the screen. Beatrice had been trying to contact me ever since the day I moved. I didn't answer. What could I say? That I forgave her betrayal? That would be a lie. That I was sorry? No, I didn't. That I missed her? Maybe, but not the Beatrice she had become, but the little girl she had once been. A light knock on the door brought me out of my reverie. Mr. Haraway, a woman's voice called. This is Vanessa, the social worker. I brought information about group activities as you requested. I opened the door. Vanessa, an energetic woman in her 40s, smiled warmly, holding a folder of documents. Come in, I said, stepping aside. How are you settling in? She asked, looking around the apartment. Do you have everything you need? Yes, thank you. It's very comfortable. She smiled even wider. Great. We have a lot of interesting things going on today. At 10:30, there's a gardening group. They're discussing fall planting right now. At 1 p.m., there's a book club. They're reading Fitzgerald. And at 3 p.m., there's art class. I took the folder with the schedule she handed me. The idea of participating in group activities with strangers made me uncomfortable, but I understood that isolation was not the best solution, especially now. Maybe the book club, I said after a pause. I've always loved reading. Wonderful. Vanessa looked genuinely pleased. They meet in the common room on the first floor. Would you like me to come with you? No, that's okay. I'll find my way, I said, my hands trembling with excitement, so I hid them in the pockets of my sweatpants. After Vanessa left, I returned to the window. The elderly couple was still there, now sitting on a bench, holding hands. Something like envy pricked me. Elaine and I could have been like that now, if fate had decided otherwise. The memory of my wife brought the usual pain, but now it was mixed with guilt. What would Elaine say about my decision? Would she approve of breaking ties with our only daughter, even if she had behaved so unworthily? Elaine had always been more forgiving, more gentle. She found excuses even for Beatrice's most unpleasant actions. When she failed her college exams because she spent her nights in clubs. When she deceived us by taking money supposedly for textbooks and spending it on a new phone. When she brought home Knox, a man Elaine disliked at first sight. She's just trying to find herself, Elaine would say when I got upset about my daughter's latest escapade. Give her time. But there wasn't much time. Elaine died of a stroke 5 years ago, just a month before our 40th anniversary. She didn't see Beatrice finally turn into a selfish, greedy woman, willing to sacrifice her father for her own comfort. The book club turned out to be a pleasant surprise. 7 elderly people, including me, discussed The Great Gatsby, arguing about the character's motives with an energy one might expect from college students. I listened more than I spoke, but for the first time in a long time, I felt interested in something other than my own problems. You're new here, aren't you? A gray-haired woman with bright red lipstick and elegant glasses approached me. I'm Miriam Goldstein, former professor of English literature. Quentin Haraway, I said, cautiously shaking her outstretched hand, trying to hide my tremor. Former civil engineer. Oh, how interesting! Her eyes sparkled. My husband was an architect. You must have worked with many like him. Yes, my whole life, I smiled, remembering my years of work. At times it was a challenge. Miriam laughed. Richard was unbearable during projects. Everything had to be perfect down to the millimeter. We talked for almost another hour, even after the others had left. Miriam told me that she had been living in Sunny Terraces for 3 years, since her husband's death. She had 2 adult sons who visited her regularly and 5 grandchildren. Do you have a family? She asked. My wife died 5 years ago, I replied after a pause. My daughter. We're not on speaking terms. Miriam tactfully chose not to pursue the subject, for which I was grateful. When I returned to my apartment in the evening, I found a voice message on my landline answering machine. Dad, it's Beatrice. My daughter's voice sounded unusually soft, almost ingratiating. Please call me back. We need to talk. I want to apologize for everything. Call me back, okay? I deleted the message without listening to the end. Something in her voice alarmed me. Too much insincerity, too rehearsed. Beatrice had never been able to apologize sincerely, even as a child. There was always some hidden motive. The next 2 weeks flew by unnoticed. I gradually became involved in the life of Sunny Terraces. I attended a literary club, where I became friends with Miriam and several other residents. I started attending adaptive physical education classes, which helped me cope with my progressive muscle stiffness. I even joined a gardening group, although it was becoming increasingly difficult to hold gardening tools. Beatrice continued to call, but less often. I didn't answer. Eli told me that he and Knox had moved out of the house the day before the 30-day period expired, leaving behind a few broken items and a mess that the cleaning service had to clean up. The foundation has already found new tenants, Eli said during one of his visits. A young family with 2 children. They pay on time and take good care of the house. I think Elaine would be happy. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. The house I built will once again become a real family home. One morning, as I was returning from physical therapy, Knox was waiting for me at the entrance to the residential complex. He shifted from foot to foot, looking around nervously. "Quentin," he stepped forward, trying to put on a friendly smile. "You look good." "Knox," I nodded without stopping. "What are you doing here?" "I, Beatrice and I would like to talk." He walked beside me to the elevator. "This whole misunderstanding has gone too far." "Misunderstanding?" I stopped, looking him in the eye. "You plan to get rid of me like a piece of unwanted furniture. That's not a misunderstanding. That's betrayal." Knox looked embarrassed, but quickly regained his composure. "Listen, we all got carried away. Beatrice is very upset. She wants to make things right. Why did you really come here, Knox?" I was tired of these games. He looked around, made sure no one could hear us, and lowered his voice. "We have problems, Quentin. Serious problems." "What does that have to do with me?" "We can't find decent housing." Knox looked genuinely concerned. "Everything is too expensive. And what we can afford, you wouldn't believe what kind of bed-bug-infested places they are. And we thought maybe you could help. A small loan so we can make the down payment on a decent apartment. Or maybe you could talk to the foundation to lower the rent on the house so we could move back." I stared at him, unable to believe my ears. After everything that had happened, he had the audacity to ask for money. "Knox," I said calmly, "I'm not going to finance your lifestyle anymore. No loans, no talking to the foundation. You're adults. Deal with it yourselves." His face contorted with anger. "It's all because of your pride. Can't you forgive us for wanting to send you to a nursing home? Yes, maybe it wasn't the best idea, but we sincerely thought it would be better." "Better for whom?" I asked. "For me? Or for you so you could get the house?" Knox had no answer. "Tell Beatrice I'm not interested in fake apologies," I said, pressing the elevator button. "And don't come here anymore. Security has orders not to let you in." "You'll regret this, old man," Knox shouted after me as the elevator doors closed. "When you die alone, you'll regret it." His words hit me harder than I expected. Not the threat, but the truth they contained. I would most likely die alone, without family, without loved ones around me. It was a conscious choice, but that didn't make it any easier. In my apartment, I sat by the window for a long time, watching the sunset. The tremor in my hands intensified, and I took an extra pill, even though I usually tried to strictly adhere to my medication regimen. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Miriam was standing on the doorstep with a basket covered with a napkin. "I baked a blueberry pie," she said with a smile. "I thought you might want to join me for a cup of tea." I wanted to refuse. I wasn't in the mood for social interaction. But something in her eyes, a sincere warmth and understanding, made me change my mind. "I'd love to," I said, letting her into the apartment. We drank tea and ate pie, discussing a new book for the book club. Miriam told amusing stories from her teaching career, and I recalled curious incidents from construction sites. Gradually, the heaviness in my heart began to lift. "You know," Miriam said when we finished the pie, "when my Richard died, I thought my life was over too. 52 years together is not just a marriage, it's a whole universe for two." I nodded, understanding what she was talking about. Elaine and I had been together for 39 years and several months. Less, but enough to create our own universe. "The first year I just existed," Miriam continued, "like a ghost. The children insisted that I move here, closer to them. I only agreed so they would leave me alone. And then I realized something important." "What exactly?" I asked, intrigued. "That life doesn't end until you decide to end it," she smiled. "Yes, it changes, sometimes beyond recognition. But it goes on, and there can still be room in it for new friends, new hobbies, new joys." I was silent, pondering her words. They resonated with something deep inside me. "I noticed that you know a lot about architecture," Miriam said unexpectedly. "We have a modeling club at our complex. They build miniature copies of famous buildings. Maybe you'd be interested?" "With my hands?" I smiled grimly, pointing to my trembling fingers. They have a member with Alzheimer's who can no longer remember his name, but he creates incredible models, she winked. They found a way to adapt the process. I think they'll come up with something for you too. After Miriam left, I thought long and hard about our conversation. Maybe she was right. Maybe life really does go on. Even after such heavy losses, the death of my wife, my daughter's betrayal, the loss of my home, my progressive illness. The next morning, I decided to visit the modeling club. To my surprise, they really had found ways to allow me to participate in the process despite my tremors. Special clamps for parts, weights for my hands, enlarged models that were easier to work with. And most importantly, no one rushed me. No one looked at me with pity or irritation when I dropped parts or couldn't perform a precise movement. Gradually, I began to find a new rhythm in life. My days were filled with classes, new acquaintances, and even small achievements, such as when I was able to assemble a miniature balcony for a model of the Brooklyn Bridge on my own. Beatrice continued to call, but less and less often. Her last message was filled with bitterness and accusations. "You've always been like that, Dad. Cold, calculating. Only Mom saw anything good in you. Stay there, in your nursing home, since you like it so much. We're fine without you." I didn't reply. What could I say? That I was sorry? That would have been a lie. I didn't regret my decision, although sometimes at night, when the tremors were particularly severe and kept me awake, I was overcome with doubt. Did I do the right thing? Was I too cruel to my only daughter? Was I punishing her for simply being different, not the way I wanted her to be? But then I remembered their conversation about the nursing home, her words, "You're useless," the slap, and I realized that I had made the only possible choice. Sometimes you have to let go of even the closest people if the relationship has turned into a toxic bond that destroys both sides. At Sunny Terraces, I gradually became myself. The staff knew my habits and preferences, my neighbors greeted me in the hallways, and some, like Miriam, became true friends. I even started a small club on the basics of engineering for interested residents. More theory than practice, given my condition, but it still gave me a sense of usefulness and satisfaction. The disease progressed, as Dr. Parrish had warned. The tremors intensified, and my movements became increasingly stiff. But thanks to regular physical therapy and the right medication, I still retained a relative degree of independence. Most importantly, I no longer felt useless. It was a surprisingly warm autumn day for October. I sat on a bench in the courtyard of Sunny Terraces, watching the leaves fall from the maple trees. It had been exactly 6 months since I moved here. 6 months of a new life. Miriam sat down next to me, handing me a cup of coffee from a local coffee shop. Over the months, our friendship had grown into something more. Not a romantic relationship, we were both too attached to the memory of our spouses for that, but a deep, comfortable closeness between two people who understood each other without words. "To your birthday," she said, lightly touching her cup to mine. 78 is a respectable number. It makes you wonder how much more is ahead. I took a sip, enjoying the taste of real, strong coffee. The Sunny Terraces cafeteria brewed a decent cup, but nothing could compare to the bean-to-cup coffee from the little coffee shop on the corner. "It depends on how you look at it," Miriam remarked philosophically. "My Aunt Sophie is 103 years old, and she still makes her own breakfast." I smiled. Miriam always knew how to find a positive perspective. Over the months, her optimism had become a kind of anchor for me, especially on days when the disease made itself particularly felt. "How's your skyscraper model?" she asked, changing the subject. "I've almost finished the top floor. Ralph helped with the small details." Ralph, a former surgeon with Alzheimer's disease, became my unexpected modeling partner. On his clear days, he helped me with details that required precision my shaky hands could no longer provide. On his foggy days, I told him about the engineering principles behind skyscraper design, and he listened with genuine interest, though he often forgot the information by the end of the conversation. "Eli called today," I said after a pause. "He has news about Beatrice and Knox." Miriam raised an eyebrow but didn't ask any questions. She knew the whole story and understood how sensitive the subject was. "They sold almost all their property," I continued, watching the swirling leaves. "Noah's antique business has finally gone bust. Beatrice is still working at the travel agency, but they're barely making ends meet. They're renting a small apartment on the outskirts now." And how do you feel about that? Miriam always asked the right questions. I thought about it. How did I feel? Glee? No. Satisfaction? No, not that either. More like confirmation. Confirmation that they had indeed been living off me for 20 years, unable to manage their own finances. I feel like they're finally living a real adult life, I replied, with all its difficulties and the consequences of their own decisions. Miriam nodded understandingly. She never judged my choice to break off relations with my daughter, even though she herself was very close to her children. Maybe this is exactly what they needed all these years. We sat in silence, watching a group of residents play bocce on a specially equipped court. Simple pleasures had become an important part of my new life. Morning coffee with Miriam, a game of chess with Howard, a former physics professor, weekly literary club meetings, working on building models. The disease progressed, as Dr. Parrish had warned. Now I had both good and bad days. On the good days, I could function almost normally. On the bad days, I could barely dress myself. But Sunny Terraces had an excellent support system. Nurses who knew when to help and when to let me manage on my own. Social workers who organized activities tailored to different abilities. Residents who were understanding of other people's limitations. Eli said something else, I said after a long pause. Beatrice asked about my birthday. It looks like she wants to come. Miriam turned to me. And will you let her? I don't know, I answered honestly. Part of me wants to see her, to find out how she's doing, but another part remembers that slap in the words, "You're useless." It's okay to have mixed feelings, Miriam said gently. She's your daughter no matter what. I nodded. Beatrice was still my daughter, my flesh and blood. No betrayal could change that biological fact. But did that mean I had to let her back into my life? Especially considering that her sudden interest in my birthday was most likely related to their financial difficulties. I'll think about it, I said, finishing my coffee. I don't want to make any decisions today. Today, I just want to enjoy my birthday. The party my new friends had organized was modest but warm. Miriam baked a blueberry cake, my favorite. Howard gave me a rare edition of an architecture book he found in a used bookstore. Ralph, on one of his clear days, presented me with a carved box for small items that he made himself. Vanessa, on behalf of the staff, presented me with a gift certificate for a massage, which was especially beneficial given my condition. We sat in the common room, drank champagne, just a little considering our medications, and shared stories. I talked about my engineering projects, the house I had built with my own hands, and my travels with Elaine. They listened with genuine interest, without the condescending politeness with which Beatrice and Knox treated my memories. Around 8 in the evening, as the party was winding down, the phone rang at the reception desk. The administrator on duty, a young man named Mark, approached me. Mr. Haraway, you have a visitor, Miss Beatrice Drummond. Shall I tell her you're resting? I felt my muscles tense up, not only because of my illness, but also because of the surprise. Beatrice hadn't called ahead or asked permission to come. She just showed up, as always, expecting the world to bend to her will. No, I'll see her, I decided after a pause. Please show her to my apartment. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I said goodbye to my guests, thanking them for a wonderful evening. Miriam lingered, looking intently into my eyes. Are you sure you can handle it? I can wait in the cafeteria if you need me to. I'll be fine, I patted her hand. But thank you for the offer. Approaching my apartment, I took a deep breath before opening the door. Beatrice was sitting on the edge of the sofa, nervously fiddling with the strap of her handbag. She looked different, thinner, more tired. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back into a simple ponytail. Instead of designer clothes, she was wearing jeans and a simple blouse. Dad, she stood up when she saw me. You look well. Hello, Beatrice. I walked into the room and sank into my favorite chair. Today was a good day, with minimal tremors, but I still preferred to sit while talking to her. To what do I owe this visit? Today is your birthday, she forced a smile. I couldn't not come. I even have a gift. She held out a small box wrapped in bright paper. I took it, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. Anger, resentment, wariness, but also something else. Longing for what might have been if our relationship had turned out differently. Thank you, I said, placing the box on the table. I'll open it later. Beatrice nodded, clearly disappointed, but didn't insist. How are you? How's your health? Progressing as expected. Good days alternate with bad days. Today is a good day. I'm glad, she said, sitting down on the sofa again. How are you liking it here? This place, it's better than I imagined. Sunny Terraces is a great complex. Good staff, interesting neighbors, lots of activities. There was an awkward pause. Beatrice clearly wanted to say something else, but couldn't bring herself to do so. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. Dad, she finally said, meeting my gaze, I came to apologize for everything, for how Knox and I behaved, for planning to send you to that awful nursing home, for slapping you. I looked at her closely, trying to gauge how sincere her words were. Beatrice had always been a good actress when it came to getting what she wanted. And why now, Beatrice? Why not 6 months ago, when I was leaving? Not 3 months ago when Knox came to ask for money? She flinched, clearly not expecting me to know about her husband's visit. I needed time to realize everything, to understand what we had done. And what have you done? I leaned forward, resting on my cane. In your opinion, we were ungrateful, she lowered her eyes. You gave us a roof over our heads, paid our bills, never asked for anything in return. And we took it for granted. And when you got sick, when you needed our support, we only thought of ourselves. Her words sounded right, but something in her voice, in her posture, in the way she avoided looking me in the eye, made me doubt her sincerity. How are you living now? I asked, changing the subject. Beatrice nervously ran her hand through her hair. Honestly, not very well. We rent an apartment in Hilliard, 1 bedroom, a small living room. Knox had to get a job as a salesman in an electronics store. His antique business didn't work out. And you came to me because you're my father, she looked up, her eyes glistening with tears. And I miss you. I really miss you. Not because you need money? Beatrice sighed. I knew you'd think that. Yes, things are difficult for us right now, but that's not why I came. I really want to rebuild our relationship. I was silent for a long time, studying her face, the face of my daughter, whom I had loved since the moment she was born, whom I taught to ride a bike, to whom I read bedtime stories, whom I helped with her math homework, the face of the woman who called me useless and slapped me in the face. Beatrice, I finally said, I believe that part of you really misses me, according to my father, if not according to me. But I also believe that most of you came here hoping for financial help, and it's not even about the money. Dad, that's not true, she tried to interrupt me. I raised my hand to stop her. Let me finish, please. It's not about the money, it's about the fact that you still don't understand what you did wrong. You say you were ungrateful, that you didn't appreciate my support, but you don't talk about how you planned to get rid of me like I was a useless thing, how you considered me a burden because of my illness, how you were ready to sell the house into which I had put part of my soul for your own benefit. Beatrice sat motionless, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. I was a terrible daughter, she whispered. I know that. You were a daughter who made bad choices. I gently corrected her. Many bad choices, over many years. And now you're here because you're facing the consequences of those choices. What can I do? She asked, wiping away her tears. How can I prove that I'm truly sorry? I sighed. Part of me wanted to forgive her, hug her, tell her that everything would be okay. That was the part that would always see her as the little girl with pigtails. But another part, a wiser part, knew that true forgiveness cannot be given just like that. It must be earned. Prove it with your actions, Beatrice. Not to me, but to yourself. Learn to live independently, without anyone's financial support. Build a career, relationships, and a life that you can be proud of. Become a person who doesn't abandon loved ones in difficult times. But what about us? Our relationship? I'm not closing this door forever, I said, carefully getting up from the chair. But right now, I'm not ready to let you back into my life. It took me 6 months to build something new, something that belongs only to me. I can't risk that. Beatrice also stood up, her face wet with tears. I understand, she said quietly. I don't deserve a second chance. Not yet. Not yet, I agreed. She took a step toward me as if she wanted to hug me, but stopped, unsure of my reaction. Instead, she simply held out her hand for a handshake. "Happy birthday, Dad." I shook her hand, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. "Thank you, Beatrice." After she left, I stood at the window for a long time, looking at the night pond reflecting the stars. Somewhere out there were the ducks that Miriam and I fed in the mornings. In the morning, they would be waiting for us as usual. Life went on, despite everything. My illness would progress. There was nothing I could do about it. Perhaps in a year or two, I would need much more help. Perhaps the day would come when I would not be able to hold a spoon or button my shirt by myself. But now at this moment, I felt a strange calm and confidence. I had made the right decision 6 months ago. And today, too, the small box with the gift from Beatrice was still lying on the table. I opened it. Inside were the cufflinks I had given Beatrice on her 16th birthday. Antique, silver, with small sapphires. "You will give them to your future husband on your wedding day," I said then. She was so happy, so grateful. What happened to that girl? I carefully closed the box and placed it on the shelf next to Elaine's photo. Whatever happens next, the past will remain a part of me, the good and the bad. I heard laughter outside. Miriam and Howard were returning from their evening walk. In a few minutes, they would probably stop by to see how my meeting with my daughter had gone. My new friends, my new family, not by blood but by choice. I turned away from the window and picked up the model of the skyscraper I had been working on for the past few weeks. The top floor still needed some work. Tomorrow I would ask Ralph to help with the small details. I still had many projects ahead of me, many books to discuss in the book club, many morning coffees with Miriam. And maybe someday Beatrice will really change, really understand. But that will be another story, another chapter. And this one is coming to an end. Not with reconciliation, but with acceptance. Acceptance of illness, acceptance of loss, acceptance of myself. And in that acceptance, I found a strength I never expected.